Hi, and welcome to Off the Menu. Today, we're at Jimmy Joe's Curbside Grill in Bennington, Vermont. Jimmy is a master of street food, and these tastes and smells of street food, there's nothing better. And we're here at Jimmy Joe's to fulfill our appetites today. I'd like to introduce you to my guest for this episode, Don Trachte. Don,
hello.
Welcome.
Good to see you, Bruce.
I'm glad to have you as my guest on the show. Don and I have known each other for several years. And I would say, Don, like me, you're probably a connoisseur of street food.
I love food,
Yep.
That's for sure.
And I do too. And so let me ask you, did you bring your appetite?
I sure did.
I did as well. And I know that Jimmy Joe has prepared some really nice things for us today to enjoy. So Let's enjoy the episode. Welcome to Off the Menu, and let's get started.
Let's do it.
Jim, I'd like to say hello. Jim Carroll, proud owner and proprietor of Jimmy Joe's Curbside Grill. Jim, I've watched you cook at many an event. You make some great food. I've enjoyed your sandwiches for several years and really looking forward to sample your specialties today on the show.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for coming.
Thanks a lot for having us today, and we're going to have a terrific episode thanks to you.
My pleasure.
All right, looking forward to the food. Let's get started.
You got it.
All right, good deal. So Don, welcome to Jimmy Joe's and welcome to Off the Menu.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about how you fared with some of the recent storms.
Oh boy, I've been into some pump hell. It's been amazing. This last couple weeks, we've gone through, as you know, everybody in this area has had water in their basement, water on their lawns. And I must say though, well, we had a few stressful moments. It wasn't so bad for us as it was for the folks on the mountain.
Yeah, I feel the same, and you know, certainly could have been a lot worse. And of course, the storms we're talking about are the remnants of Tropical Storm Irene that roared through here, and the remnants of Tropical Storm Lee right behind it. And I think this area probably took pretty close to 12 inches of rain in a very short amount of time. And obviously, with the mountains we have and the type of terrain, that water's got nowhere to go. And you know, it's nice to see the relief efforts for those that are in need doing a great job around the town. And you know, one of those was in fact Jim Carroll here at Jimmy Joe's, because soon after the disaster, Jim, you know, put out an alert that anybody that was without electricity, that had no ability to cook, could come here and eat free.
Wow.
And he did that for the community, and I think that's pretty cool.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
That's a great service, because a lot of folks were out of power for at least 12 hours. Yep. In both storms. So, and then of course some of the poor people just lost lots of stuff, you know, loss of their belongings and their bedding and their furniture. So
it's amazing to see the relief efforts in the town. They're making a difference. Bridges that I thought would take months to reconstruct were opening instead in a matter of weeks. That's just a really gargantuan and tremendous effort on the part of the town. So really good to see.
It is.
But wow, what a stellar, beautiful day today.
We lucked out today, didn't we?
It's sunny, it's about 72 degrees, and I'd say we earned every bit of it.
We sure did.
So Don, tell me, how long have you lived in Vermont?
Our family moved to Vermont in 1950, and my dad was a cartoonist, and he moved to Vermont in 1950 to Arlington, which is just north of us here.
Yep, and you've been here ever since, or have you lived some other places as well?
Oh, I went away to college, and then I kicked around the country all over the place. I lived a little bit in Colorado, Reno, Nevada, and mostly Connecticut. But I kept coming back to Vermont.
Yeah, it's a great place here. I like you, I've lived 19 places.
Wow.
And once I came to Bennington, I kind of made the pledge to myself that I'm never leaving because I absolutely love it here. I love the people, I love the town, and I love the state of Vermont. It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
It really is. And up until the last 2 weeks, we've been pretty free of any earthquakes and hurricanes, except I can't say that anymore.
I was getting calls during the storms from my daughter in Florida, and we were talking about how upside down the world is, that she was calling me from Florida, checking on me in Vermont during the hurricane.
I know. We got lopsided here, didn't we?
Yeah, we certainly did.
Usually it's benign up here, but you know, we all made it through, and I think the reconstruction is going on. They're doing a great job. And they're getting people's lives put back together. So.
Hi, this is Jim Carroll, and you're at Jimmy Joe's Curbside Grill today. And I'll be serving my half-pound signature bacon cheeseburger, grilled pastrami and Swiss on toasted rye, and I'll also be serving my mother's macaroni and cheese recipe.
All right.
Oh boy.
Jim, what do we have?
That's clam chowder that I make, and it's loaded with clams. And this is my mom's macaroni and cheese recipe. And it's made with Cabot's 100 Sharp and stewed tomatoes.
Fantastic.
And when we were kids, growing up here, we used to go and slide at the hospital. We'd go from early morning to dark, and often my mother would have this ready for us, and we'd devour it, and then go into a coma.
Tremendous. It looks great. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right.
Okay.
And as Jim was delivering the clam chowder a minute ago, he said the mark of a good clam chowder is when you can stand your spoon up in it. So look at that. I'm saying that must be a pretty good clam chowder.
I guess so.
You know, Don, it's funny. I love clam chowder. And I thought I really knew what good clam chowder was about. And then I came to New England. And there's a reason why it's called New England clam chowder.
I love it too.
Boy, look at the macaroni and cheese. I'm looking at the crust that's on the top of the macaroni. It looks absolutely fantastic, doesn't it?
It does.
And it's the smell just absolutely terrific.
I can't wait to dig in.
Well, I think we should start.
Okay.
I don't know whether to start with the chowder or the mac and cheese, but let's mix it up.
Well, the chowder's closest to me, so I'm going to start there.
Are you a crackers in your chowder guy?
Yes,
or?
yes.
I am as well. So I'm going
to do the whole bit.
I'm going to do the whole shenanigans.
Yeah. What's really interesting, this isn't just hot dogs. You know, you've got this great chowder. I haven't even tasted this. I better get into the macaroni too.
Yep, I want to try it, but the chowder's so good I can't stop.
I'm going to sample it.
The tradition of street food is one that spans every country. It's a wonderful cultural experience, and it's a celebration of the culture that we live in. Jimmy Joe does a terrific job of preparing specialties from New York, from Vermont, using fresh ingredients. The clam chowder is just amazing, and Jimmy Joe loads it with clams, potatoes, corn, cream, and just the right amount of spices. It's nice that the macaroni and cheese is his mother's recipe, so family tradition continues in his street food, served with ideal Vermont Cabot cheddar cheese. Vermont, arguably, is the capital of cheese, and we have wonderful cheese here, and macaroni and cheese is a tremendous dish to serve. He also includes tomatoes in the dish, which is something that I haven't seen before, and it makes the flavor absolutely marvelous. The portions are huge, and we're wondering how in the world we're going to have room for the next course. The traffic noise that you hear in the background is largely trucks that are full of rescue supplies for the hurricane victims that are traveling up to the mountains to repair the bridges and roads. So the environment is a little noisier than it otherwise would be. But that didn't stop Don and I from wanting to record the episode and sample Jimmy Joe's food. Truly a tremendous opportunity, and really a nice environment, and Jim is just an excellent cook. He's the master of the grill, the master of street food in Bennington, and we're enjoying the fruits of his labors.
Gentlemen, how is it so far?
It's fantastic.
Good.
Jim, this chowder. My God.
I know. I'd load it up with chowder. There's nothing worse than going to a restaurant and having to use a sieve to find a clam.
It's terrific. It's just terrific. And the macaroni, I was remarking that I don't think I've ever had any that had tomato in it.
That's the way my mother always made it.
And what a nice flavor that imparts to the whole dish. It's really good, and the crust on top. Oh, my goodness. Now, surely, do you cook that here at your cart?
No, I do it at home.
So you do some of these at home and bring them in to
Mac
serve.
and cheese.
How about the soup?
I do that here. But I'll cook it overnight at about 250 in the oven and just let it thicken up all by itself.
Wow.
And I got to say, not only is it super food, but plenty of it. I've got a,
I try to give people their money's worth.
yeah, this is great.
Just tremendous. Really enjoying it.
Just let me know when you're ready for the second course. And
All right, we will.
serve it up for you.
Thanks a lot. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
We're gonna certainly enjoy this first, though. So, Don, one of the stories that you told me soon after I met you was about your family's connection with Norman Rockwell and some famous Norman Rockwell paintings. Norman Rockwell, of course, being the iconic American painter that did so many covers for the Saturday Night Post and so many very famous paintings in the 1940s, 1950s. Just a fantastic story. Don, why don't you share that with us?
Well, you know, Bruce, I have a long version and a short version. The short version is about 4 hours, so. But let's just try to recap here. Our family moved to Vermont in 1950. My dad was an artist. He was a cartoonist who drew Little Henry. And we lived next to Norman Rockwell, well, at least within a mile, and in the country, that's next door. So in 1960, my dad bought a painting from Norman Rockwell called Breaking Home Ties. And that painting had been on the Post cover in 1954. It was a famous cover. The original painting traveled all over the world. And but by 1960, my father decided to put a bid in, and he bought the painting. And we kept it in our home, and it was hanging in our living room for years. In 1964, it traveled to Russia and to Egypt on tour as a goodwill tour, and came back. But my father was very possessive of this painting, never wanted to leave it, let it leave the house. And after that, it rarely ever did leave. Maybe one more time that Norman Rockwell requested that it would be out on tour, but that was about it. And then in 1973, unfortunately, my parents went through a divorce. And like all things, they had to go through a period of time where they had to figure out their possessions and so forth. And when it came to this painting, they decided that they would divide a group of paintings, including the Norman Rockwell Breaking Home Ties painting, which my father owned. And they decided that those paintings, a collection of 8 paintings, would go immediately to the children as part of the divorce decree. And with that, of course, we were young. We had no real place to hang the painting, so we allowed our parents to keep the 8 paintings hanging in their respective homes. And but there the paintings hung for the next 30 years. Well, as my father got older, and in 2003, I decided it would be a good idea to put the painting in the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. I just wanted it for safekeeping. And I took it down there, and they hung it, and everyone was thrilled that they had seen this painting for the first time in 30 years. But after a couple of years, there were questions about what might have happened to this painting, because some experts recalled that there were variations or little discrepancies in what they remembered or recalled in the original painting. Well, by 2005, 2004, more clues began to emerge. By 2005, my dad passed away. So after that, more clues began to emerge. And they were things like the other paintings in the collection of 8. We had people decide that there were discrepancies in those paintings as well. So with that, by 2006, I began to almost give up on the idea that there was something wrong with the painting, and I kind of almost gave up on the idea that maybe there was forever something wrong with this. My brother, David, began to search in my father's studio, and as he did in 2006, he uncovered even more clues, and by the spring of 2006, we decided that we had to take the painting and put it back to take it back to the conservation group, have them examine it one more time, and they did this with an X-ray to determine if there had been any tampering with the original painting. About 2 weeks later, they wrote us a letter and said nothing had ever changed, and at that moment I knew something was wrong, because how could you account for changes in a painting if there were never made? With that, my brother began to search in my dad's studio, and one day he called me up and he said, "I think you better get down here, take a look at something." The following day, I went down to the studio in Arlington, and my brother pointed out a bookcase, and as we looked at this bookcase, we noticed some scratches on the inner wall, and we began to examine how this bookcase was made. And by the way, it was made by my father. And the more we looked at it, we decided if we could take the books out of the shelves and began to dismantle the shelves themselves, that we could actually move the wall physically that was next to it. When we began to move that wall, we discovered 2 of the original 8 paintings hanging behind a secret cache behind that first wall. And we continued to move that first wall. We found a total of 5 paintings behind the first wall. And some moments later, who knows, we were beside ourselves, so I wasn't aware of actual time. But minutes later, I moved the second wall, and the original Norman Rockwell painting was behind that second wall.
It's such an amazing story, and I've heard you tell it before, but to discover an original Norman Rockwell that was hidden away in a secret compartment by your father, that must have been just an amazing moment for you and your brother. Just amazing.
It was truly amazing. I think that I almost, as I said, given up on the idea that maybe we'd never ever discover the real reasons behind the discrepancies earlier in that year. But to find that the original was in safekeeping, it was light-free, bug-free, mouse-proof.
Perfect condition. Don, thanks a lot for sharing that story with us on Off the Menu.
Well, thank you for inviting me over here today.
Enjoyed hearing it. Thanks.
Thank you.
When people come to the grill and they have my burgers, they often say that sometimes that it's the best burger they ever had, or the best burger they've had in quite a while, and I think that's mainly owed to the fact that I cook everything on the grill, and as a consequence, the sugars from the foods that I cook, peppers and onions, the pastrami, the burgers, hot dogs, Italian sausage and kielbasa, and the pulled pork all happen to, the sugars remain on the grill, so that all those flavors blend with everything that I cook, including, of course, the burger. And apart from just a little salt and pepper, there's no other seasoning. You'll notice also that once I pat the burgers down, I'll put a lid on it, and that helps to speed the process of cooking and gets the food out a little faster. In addition to that, I never ever touch the food, so you'll see me use the tongs for opening up the bread and the rolls, not touching the food is really, really important to me. I don't ever want to touch your food, and I certainly don't want anybody touching my food when I go out to eat. I've added mayo to the slice of rye bread. I use that to toast the bread because it gives it a nice golden color, as well as a nice tangy, rich flavor to the bread, and accents the overall flavor of the pastrami on rye. Here too, you'll notice me when I flip the burgers. You see how I touch the burger. There's a rule of thumb or a rule of chin when you cook, and that is you can tell how well a burger is done by the way it feels at the end of a spatula. So in other words, if you touch the density of your chin, that equals about medium rare. You touch your forehead, that's medium, and the tip of your nose is the equivalent of well done. And here I am cutting up the finished product of the pastrami on rye. It goes great with beer and broth, horseradish, mustard.
Wow, Don, look at this.
Fantastic.
We've got a Jimmy Joe bacon cheeseburger and
Yep.
a pastrami on rye with, I think, Swiss.
It looks delicious.
It absolutely looks terrific. And Jimmy was kind enough to cut them in half for us so that we can share them. So now the challenge is going to be to get you half of this cheeseburger.
Okay,
And for you to get me half of that pastrami.
that's good. I can do
And
that.
we can go from there.
Finally, the main course arrives, and Don and I are ready. The pastrami is stacked high on rye with beautiful Swiss cheese melted, and the bacon cheeseburger and the aroma coming off the cheeseburger were just absolutely amazing. This is street food at its best. Evie's law is that pastrami is only good within a 200-mile radius of New York City, and Bennington qualifies. Jimmy gets his pastrami fresh, it's hot, it's spicy, and it's absolutely marvelous. He grills it to perfection and then adds the bread and the cheese to make an absolutely wonderful sandwich. Don and I are fortunate to sit and share such wonderful street food, and Jimmy Joe has done a masterful job. Some people like mustard on their pastrami. I prefer mine plain because I like the flavor of the pastrami and the Swiss and the rye, and it's so spicy and wonderful that to me, it doesn't need a thing. And as you can tell, we're certainly enjoying it.
You know, I had a friend of mine, Don, that was telling me about the hamburgers and cheeseburgers at Jimmy Joe's. And what he said was that they're so fresh and they're so good that they don't need any condiments. And he calls it the naked cheeseburger. He says it's that good. I'm finding that one as I'm eating. How about you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at this cheeseburger. Fantastic.
Jim, thank you for a fantastic meal.
My pleasure.
Man, I mean, I'm going to tell you what, the clam chowder was dynamite. The macaroni was really good and very unique with the tomatoes, the cheeses, the choice of cheeses in the macaroni, just terrific.
I'm glad
and
you
then
enjoyed
the
it.
cheeseburger, I was telling Don earlier, I have a friend who describes your cheeseburgers as they're so fresh and so good, they don't need anything on them. They're the naked cheeseburger.
I appreciate
and that's
that.
how I felt about it. And the pastrami, absolutely terrific. You're covered because you're within a 200-mile radius in New York City. Get outside that radius, pastrami's no good. So here in Bennington, the pastrami is good. Here at Jimmy Joe's.
Thank you very much.
Jim, tell us a little bit, you know, where you're from, how'd you get involved in this business, and tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, well, I was born and raised here. My mom and dad were Joe and June Carroll. And I moved away to New York City for about 20 years and owned retail stores in New York and Philadelphia. And sold them off and moved back home when my folks got sick. And in the intervening time, I painted houses in the Manchester and Dorset area. And there's a kid up there who's a good friend of mine, Neil Schulman. And I used to pull into his cart periodically to get a hot dog. And I pulled in one day, and it took him about 45 seconds to a minute to get $6.50 out of me, and I said, you know what, I can do that. So I looked at it very carefully for about 3 years and decided I could make a living. I'm not getting rich, I'm paying the bills, but it's something I really, really enjoy.
you know, it's amazing. I've been watching you serve your customers. First off, it's like every customer is your only customer.
Well, thank
and you
you.
treat everyone that way.
Thank you.
It's also amazing to watch how quickly you can prepare a pretty wide variety of items that you've got on your menu and get them served hot and fresh to your customers. It's just tremendous.
I enjoy it.
And doing multiple orders at the same time.
Yeah.
But I bet when you go home at night, I bet you sleep well.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention that I know that during some of the hurricane relief efforts, you've been very involved in that. I heard about your amazing offer to people that did not have power and could not cook on their own. You invited to come here and share a meal with your compliments. I think that is just a tremendous outreach.
Well, thank you very much.
And I'm really grateful, and thank you so much for doing that.
I was glad to do it, but this is, Bennington's that kind of place.
It really is that kind of place, and it's why I love the town.
Yeah.
But Don and I really enjoyed ourselves. Just a tremendous afternoon. Great way to
Thank
spend
you.
it.
I'm so glad you came.
So thank you so
So
much,
grateful.
Jim.
My pleasure.
We enjoyed the food and enjoyed the company today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Alrighty. Boy,
Wow.
Don, I don't know about you, but that was a real belly jammer.
I am stuffed.
I enjoyed every single thing we had.
Absolutely.
The clam chowder, it was loaded with clams. It was a big portion. The corn in the chowder really lent it a terrific flavor.
And when he brought it out, he stuck the spoon in and said, if it doesn't stand up, it's not chowder. And boy.
And it stood up the whole way through. And I'll tell you, the macaroni and cheese with the wonderful cheese crust, it was baked cheese crust that was on top,
Yeah.
the tomatoes.
I
in
love
there.
that flavor.
It was something very unique because I have never had macaroni and cheese with tomatoes before.
It was fantastic.
Yeah,
the whole
and
thing.
then, so Don, tell me, what was your favorite? The cheeseburger or the pastrami?
Oh, now don't do this to me. I love cheeseburgers, and this was thick and juicy. It was great. But boy, I love that pastrami
Yeah,
sandwich.
I still think the pastrami was my favorite.
Yeah.
But the cheeseburger was really good too. So it's hard to pick.
It is.
But the food was great. Jimmy Joe did a terrific job today. It was absolutely nice venue to do this in. I'd encourage anybody that hasn't eaten here to come and give it a try.
And it's right here on Main Street.
It's very easy.
pretty easy to get to.
And almost any sunny day, you can count on the fact that Jimmy Joe's going to be out here and he's going to be working that grill for you and me.
Absolutely.
So I would really like to thank you for being on the show, Don.
Thank you.
I had a great time. I hope you did as well.
I had a ball.
And I'd like to say, join us for the next episode of Off the Menu.
Thanks, Bruce.
Bye, Don.